Did you know that sometimes the kindest people are the ones who attract the most jealousy? It's strange, isn't it? Chica, a girl of just 18, was the very embodiment of kindness, yet it was her goodness that made her a target for others. The small, peaceful village where she lived, she was beloved by everyone. Her heart was pure, and her beauty, both inside and out, made her shine like the sun. But, as we all know, the sun can cast shadows, and Chica's light stirred up a darkness in three others: Ada, Bisi, and Ife. These three girls, though they appeared as friendly companions on the surface, harbored feelings of envy so deep that they were willing to betray Chica to take her place. Chica had everything: the respect of the elders, the affection of the village children, and even the gaze of the most handsome young man in town, Chidi. But it wasn't just her beauty that made her so loved. She had a rare quality, an effortless grace, a kindness that radiated wherever she went. When she smiled, the whole world seemed a little brighter. Her presence was magnetic, and yet, in the hearts of Ada, Bisi, and Ife, it was nothing but a growing resentment. They watched her walk through the village with admiration in the eyes of others, and they couldn't help but wish that it was them, not Chica, receiving all that attention. While the villagers were charmed by Chica's gentle nature, the three girls were plotting. Each of them had their own reasons, but the truth was they felt overlooked, underappreciated, and above all envious. Every day, they saw Chica smiling, and being praised by everyone, and each of them in their own quiet way began to feel that perhaps she was too perfect. Ada, with her sharp tongue, often mocked Chica in private. Bisi, who felt her beauty was more refined, grew bitter at the thought that Chica could be more beloved. Ife, who had never quite felt confident enough to shine on her own, harbored a quiet but burning jealousy that turned her thoughts to dark schemes. But here's the twist that you wouldn't expect. Despite their jealousy, these girls knew one thing they couldn't deny. Chica was kind. She never judged them. She was always patient, always willing to help. It was almost as if she was too good for them, and that, more than anything else, made them feel inferior. And so, as the days passed, their envy festered into something far darker, a plot that would change everything. One evening, as Chica helped her mother carry a basket of goods through the village square, Ada, Bisi, and Ife approached her with an offer she couldn't refuse. "There's a festival," they said, "in a neighboring village. It will be a celebration like no other, and we would love for you to join us." Chica, always willing to be kind and generous, agreed, despite a deep, nagging sense that something wasn't quite right. Her parents, however, had warned her about traveling alone, especially to another village that was known for its mysterious traditions. They spoke of an ancient belief in the river that ran between the villages, a belief that one must offer something of value to the river spirit in order to cross safely. But Chica, eager to see the world and make new memories, decided to disregard their advice. Little did she know, this simple decision would set the stage for everything that followed, and that, my friend, is where the trouble truly begins. Ada, Bisi, and Ife had planned more than just a trip to a festival. They had long been waiting for the right moment to put their plan into motion. They knew that Chica's kindness could be her undoing, and they intended to make sure it would be. The night air was thick with the scent of jasmine and freshly roasted meats as Chica and the three girls made their way through the narrow, winding path that led from their village to the festival. The sky was clear, and the stars seemed to shine, a little brighter, almost as if they too were curious about the journey ahead. Chica could hear the distant sounds of drums and laughter, but a strange sense of unease gripped her heart. She shrugged it off. After all, the festival was supposed to be fun, right? A celebration of music, food, and community. The road they traveled was not the usual path, but one that led to a distant village on the other side of the river. It was said that those who ventured there were met with strange and wondrous sights. Some of the older villagers even whispered about the river spirits, how they were known to protect the land, but at a price. They said that to cross the river and safely return, one had to offer something to the spirit that guarded it. Chica, however, was too young to understand such old stories. Besides, she was distracted by the excitement of the festival. Ada, Bisi, and Ife had spoken very little on the journey, their voices low and almost too casual, but Chica couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Still, she pressed on, trusting her friends. She didn't know it yet, but her trust was about to be shattered, and she would be left facing the consequences of that trust. As they approached the river, a deep fog rolled in, thick and eerie, obscuring the world around them. The water, which had once appeared inviting, now seemed foreboding. Chica stopped and looked at the water, feeling a chill run down her spine. Ada noticed her hesitation and quickly brushed it aside. "Don't worry, Chica," she said with a falsely comforting smile. "The river spirit doesn't bother anyone unless they do something foolish." But what Ada didn't know, or perhaps what she wanted Chica not to know, was that the river spirit was far from benign. The villagers had always respected it, making offerings and following the old customs. But now, Chica stood on the edge of a forbidden line, unaware that her journey was about to take a very different turn. The three girls exchanged looks, and Chica, too trusting, didn't notice. She stepped forward, a single step that would seal her fate. As she placed her foot on the bank, the water rippled in a way that felt unnatural. There was a low hum, like a voice calling out from the depths, but only Ada, Bisi, and Ife seemed to notice. They had been to the river before. They knew its rules. Ada cleared her throat. "Chica, there's something we should have told you." Chica turned to her with a puzzled expression, her heart racing in her chest. "What do you mean?" Bisi stepped forward and, in a voice that was almost too sweet to be genuine, added, "There's a rule about crossing this river. It's not just about walking across. The river spirit demands an offering. You must give something of value in exchange for your safe passage." Chica blinked in confusion. "What do you mean? I didn't know about any rule." Ife, with a gleam in her eyes, now stepped forward. "It's too late to back out now, Chica. We've crossed before, and you will too. But this time, you'll have to give something." She smiled coldly. "Something important." Chica's confusion turned to suspicion. "What are you talking about? What do you want me to give?" But before Chica could understand what was happening, Ada grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the water. "Don't question it, Chica," she said with a forcefulness that startled the girl. "We're here to have fun. You've been given everything in the village. Now it's time for the spirit to have its due." Chica tried to pull away, but Ada's grip tightened. It was then that the true nature of their intentions began to sink in, but it was already too late. The water bubbled angrily as the three girls forced her to step further into the river, closer to the spirit's domain. The moment Chica's feet touched the water, a strange sensation washed over her. It wasn't cold, but it was unnaturally heavy, like she was being weighed down by invisible hands. The sky darkened, and the sounds of the festival seemed to fade away. It was as if the world had gone silent, and the only thing that mattered now was the river. Chica struggled, but the girls were relentless. They whispered things in her ear, things she couldn't quite understand, but they sounded almost like an incantation. She could feel something watching her, something ancient and powerful from beneath the dark waters. And then it happened. A voice, deep and unearthly, emerged from the river, sending chills down her spine. It was not a human voice, nor was it a voice she could comprehend. The river spirit had spoken, and it was not pleased. With a great, terrible rush of water, the spirit rose from the depths, taking hold of Chica's body and dragging her beneath the surface. Her cries were muffled by the water, and her body felt as though it were being pulled apart by the weight of the current. Ada, Bisi, and Efe stood at the edge of the river, watching with cold indifference, their plan finally in motion. "You wanted everything, Chica," Ada whispered, her voice barely audible over the rushing water. "Now you will learn the price." And just like that, Chica was gone. The river, which had once been peaceful, was now a swirling, dangerous mass of water, a dark reminder of the treachery that had unfolded. The three girls stood there, silent, for a moment, as if savoring the moment of victory. But as the water settled, they could feel a shift in the air. The weight of their betrayal was already beginning to settle on their shoulders. But for now, it didn't matter. They had what they wanted. The village would no longer sing Chica's praises, and in their hearts they thought they had won. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the village as Chica's parents paced restlessly by the riverbank. It had been hours since their daughter had gone missing, and the only sounds that could be heard were the soft rustling of leaves in the wind and the occasional call of a distant bird. The village was eerily quiet that night, as if the earth itself held its breath, waiting for something to unfold. Chica's mother, Nena, clutched a woven basket in her hands, her fingers trembling. The absence of her daughter was unbearable. "She was just here, Uzo. She was just here," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I don't understand. How could she just disappear like that?" Uzo, Chica's father, stood beside her, his face set in lines of worry and frustration. His eyes darted around the clearing, as if expecting some clue to appear from the shadows. "I don't know, Nena. Something's wrong. I can feel it." His voice was firm, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Maybe we should have kept her closer, listened to the warnings." Nana shook her head, her face etched with sorrow. "She's always been responsible, Uzo. You know that. She wouldn't just run off. Something happened. I feel it in my bones." As the two of them stood by the river, lost in their worry, a sound broke the silence, a faint, distant cry. It was almost imperceptible at first, but as it drew nearer, it became unmistakable. It was a bird, a papagayo, calling out from the trees. Uzo and Nena exchanged a look of surprise. "A bird?" Uzo murmured, his eyebrows furrowing. "Why, would a bird come to us now?" The papagayo fluttered down from the trees, its wings beating gently in the night air. It landed softly in front of them, looking strangely exhausted, its feathers disheveled and worn. But what caught their attention wasn't just the bird's appearance, it was the strange glint in its eyes. The bird, it seemed, had something important to tell. "Why do you look at me like that, little one?" Nena whispered, bending down cautiously, her hand reaching out to stroke its feathers. But the bird didn't move away. Instead, it let out a soft, almost mournful cry, as if trying to communicate something. In that moment, something changed in the air. A stillness fell over the land, and the very earth seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sudden, eerie clarity, the bird spoke, its voice human-like, carrying a deep, ancient wisdom that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. "Chica." The bird croaked, its voice raspy but unmistakably clear. "Chica is lost. The river has claimed her." Nana gasped, stepping back in shock. "No! What do you mean?" Her voice cracked, but the bird continued, its gaze steady, unwavering. The three girls who walked with her, Ada, Bisi, and Ife, they betrayed her. They lured her to the river. She didn't know. But now the spirit of the river holds her in its grasp. Uzo's face grew pale. "No, this can't be. Tell me you're wrong. Tell me you're lying," he said, his voice rising in desperation. The bird, unflinching, shook its head slowly. "The spirit of the river does not lie. It has spoken. Chica must pay for the trespass, but she is not. Lost forever." "Then help us," Nana cried, her voice breaking. "Tell us what we must do to bring her back." The papagayo cocked its head and regarded them both with somber eyes. "There is one way only." It paused as though, weighing its words carefully. "You must face the river. You must cross it yourselves." Nena and Uzo exchanged a look of disbelief. "Cross the river? But the river spirit—" Uzo trailed off, fear creeping into his voice. "It's too dangerous. We can't—" The papagayo fixed them with an intense gaze. "You must. For the love of your daughter. Only through love can the river's fury be calmed. The spirit does not yield to anything but love." Without another word, the bird took flight, vanishing into the darkness of the night. Uzo and Nena stood there for a long moment, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The weight of the bird's words hung in the air like a dark cloud. It seemed impossible, How could they, ordinary villagers, cross the river and face the spirit that had already claimed their daughter? But Nana, her heart pounding with a mother's love, was resolute. "We will not leave our daughter to the river. We will do whatever it takes." Uzo nodded, his jaw set. "We cross, Nana, we cross." And so, as the night grew darker, the parents began their journey toward the river. With every step, their fear mounted, but it was overshadowed by something stronger: the need to save their daughter. They walked through the dense woods, the sounds of the night creatures echoing around them until they reached the riverbank. The moonlight reflected off the water, making it seem almost serene. But beneath the surface, something dark stirred. The river was not a calm, placid thing. It was alive with power, a force that could not be tamed. Uzo looked at his wife, his voice steady, but filled with determination. "We mustn't waste time. We'll offer what we must." They stood there, for a moment, gathering their strength. The air felt thick with anticipation, as if the river itself was watching them. They had no idea what awaited them on the other side. They didn't know if the river would accept their offering. All they knew was that they had to try. And then, without another word, Uzo took Nana's hand, and together they stepped into the water, their hearts beating in sync, both filled with the hope that love would guide them through. The river responded. Immediately, its waters swirling around them, rising higher with every step. The journey had begun, and their fate now rested in the hands of the ancient spirit that guarded the river's depths. Would love be enough to free Chica? Or would the river claim them too, just as it had claimed her? The moment Uzo and Nana stepped into the river, the world around them seemed to vanish. The sounds of the forest, the whispers of the wind, the distant calls of nocturnal creatures, all of it faded into an eerie silence. The water, cold and unforgiving, lapped at their ankles and rose steadily with each step they took. It was as though the river itself had awoken, aware of their presence, and was now measuring them, testing their resolve. As the waters crept higher, Nana's heart pounded with fear, but the strength of her love for Chica gave her courage. She glanced at Uzo, who walked beside her, his face grim but determined. His hand, tight around hers, was the only anchor she had left in this moment of uncertainty. She could feel his heartbeat beneath her touch, steady, reassuring. For all the doubt that clouded their minds, for all the fear of the unknown, one truth remained. They had to save their daughter, no matter the cost. The river was not kind. It roiled and churned beneath their feet, the current pulling at their legs as though it wanted to drag them deeper into its abyss. Nana stumbled once, but Uzo caught her, his grip firm. They exchanged a brief glance, but neither said a word. The words weren't necessary. They both understood what was at stake. As they moved forward, the water grew colder, the darkness of the river's depths becoming more oppressive. The surface glimmered in the pale moonlight, but beneath it, there, was a growing sense of something malevolent, something ancient and powerful that watched them, waited for them to falter. The spirit of the river was alive, and it wasn't pleased to have intruders. Nana's voice trembled as she spoke, breaking the silence between them. "Uzo, do you feel that? There's something in the water. It's watching us." Uzo nodded, his expression unchanging. "I know! We have to keep going. We can't turn back now." With every step, the water seemed to fight them, pushing them backward, dragging at their legs with an unseen force. It was as though the river itself was trying to reject them, to punish them for daring to cross its threshold. But Nana, driven by the image of her daughter's face, pushed forward, refusing to let the river win. And then, as if the river had been waiting for the right moment, the water around them surged, violently. The current intensified, pulling them off balance. Nana gasped as she felt herself being dragged deeper into the water, the weight of the current threatening to pull her under. "Uzo!" she cried, panic creeping into her voice. But before Uzo could respond, a voice, low, cold, and commanding, echoed through the darkness. "Stop." The word was like a command from the earth itself. It froze them both in place, their bodies locked in fear, their hearts racing. The voice wasn't one they recognized, but there was an authority to it that made their skin crawl. Suddenly, the water around them stilled. The current ceased its furious pull, and the silence returned. It was unnatural, a quiet so deep it felt as though even the stars held their breath. Out of the depths of the river, a figure began to emerge. It was tall and dark, its form shifting like smoke. The figure rose from the water like a ghost, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The air around it seemed to vibrate with power, and as it fully emerged from the river, they could see it clearly. A being of ancient design, wrapped in robes made of water and shadows, its face hidden beneath a hood. Uzo stepped forward, his voice trembling with authority he didn't feel. "Who are you? What do you want with us?" The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, it surveyed them, its glowing eyes boring into their souls. "You seek to cross the river," it said finally, its voice echoing like the distant rumble of thunder. "You seek to reclaim that which was taken from you." Nana's heart clenched as she whispered, "Please, we need our daughter back. The river took her." "We'll do anything, please just let us cross." The figure tilted its head slightly as if considering her words. "Anything, you say?" It stepped closer, the water rippling with each movement, as if it were a part of the river itself. "Do you understand what you ask? The river demands a price that even the strongest cannot pay without sacrifice." Uzo clenched his fists, his voice rising. "We've already lost her. We've already paid a price. We will do whatever it takes to bring her back." The figure studied them for a long moment, its eyes never leaving theirs. "Then you must prove it," it said, its voice low and heavy with finality. "The river does not give freely. It does not yield to mere words or pleas. You must face a challenge, a test." Nana and Uzo exchanged a glance, the weight of the moment settling heavily between them. "What test?" Nana asked, her voice shaky. The figure's lips, barely visible beneath its hood, curled into something that might have been a smile or a warning. "You will cross the river, but not as you are. To gain what you seek, you must prove your worth. Only those with pure hearts may pass unharmed. Only those who can withstand the river's trials may reach the other side." Uzo's heart hammered in his chest. "What must we do?" The figure raised a hand, and suddenly the water around them began to swirl once again. It was no longer just a river. It was alive, a force of nature that roared with power. "You must face your own fears," the figure intoned. "Only by overcoming what lies within you can you hope to continue. Only then will the river allow you to pass." The water around them grew darker, and from the depths, shapes began to form. Shadowy figures emerged, each one representing a different fear, a different challenge. The river was not simply testing them, it was forcing them to confront the darkest parts of themselves. Nana's breath caught in her throat as a figure stepped toward her from the water, a shadow of a woman, her face twisted in anguish, her hands outstretched as though begging for something. "No," Nana gasped. "No, it can't be." The figure in the water looked at her, its eyes burning with grief. "You failed her. You couldn't protect her. You let her go, and now she's lost forever." Nana staggered back, her chest tight with guilt, but Uzo's hand found hers once again, steadying her. "Don't listen to it," he whispered. "It's not real. This is just the river trying to break us." With a deep breath, Nana closed her eyes, focusing on the love she had for Chica, the love that had driven her here across the river to save her. "You're wrong," she said, her voice firm. "I will not let this river break me. I will save my daughter." And with those words, the figure before her dissolved into mist, the challenge passing. But the river still had more in store. This was just the beginning. As they continued their journey, they knew that this trial, whatever it might be, was far from over. The river was testing their very souls, and only by surviving its trials could they hope to reach Chica and bring her home. Would they be strong enough? Would their love truly be enough to cross the river? The answer lay ahead, but the trials had only just begun. The moment the mist of the river cleared, Uzo and Nena were no longer standing on solid ground. What was once the familiar cold, rushing water beneath their feet had now transformed into a strange, still lake. The moon hung low and heavy in the sky, casting a silver glow across the water's surface, which seemed as smooth as glass. No ripples, no waves. The lake was a perfect mirror of the dark heavens above. But the stillness was unsettling, unnatural even, and an icy shiver ran down Nena's spine. Uzo's grip on her hand tightened, a silent reassurance, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the surroundings. "Something's wrong," he murmured, his voice low. Nena nodded, her heart racing. The silence here was so profound, it felt suffocating. "Where is the river?" she whispered. "Where are we?" But Uzo didn't answer right away. He was already walking forward, carefully, as though the ground beneath him might give way at any moment. And in that stillness, every step seemed amplified, echoing in the vast emptiness around them. Then, like a sudden gust of wind, a voice, soft yet undeniably present, broke the silence. "Not all who seek will find, and not all who find will leave unchanged." Nena froze, her breath catching in her throat. It was the same voice from before, the figure who had risen from the river. But this time, it was different. The words felt like a warning, but they were laced with an undeniable truth. "Who's there?" Uzo called out, his voice carrying a mix of defiance and caution. From the center of the lake, the water began to swirl. Slowly, a figure emerged, not the shadowy entity of the river, but something else entirely. This figure was human, or at least it appeared to be. Tall, with long robes that shimmered like the water's surface, and eyes that seemed to reflect the entire sky, the figure stepped toward them, its feet never actually touching the ground. It hovered just above the water, a creature of both substance and illusion. "I am the keeper," the figure said, its voice resonating with power, echoing like a chant from the past. "I guard this place, this heart of the river, and you, travelers, have come seeking something." Nena took a step forward, but her voice wavered. "We've come to find our daughter. The river took her. We need to bring her back." The keeper's eyes glowed, and for a moment, Nena felt a chill settle deep in her bones. "And what makes... You think the river will give her back? It has taken her as it has taken so many before. What makes you different?" Uzo clenched his fists, but Nena stepped forward, her voice steady now. "We've faced trials. We've crossed the river. We've proven our love. Please, just let us see her again." The keeper's expression softened, and it nodded slowly. "Love is a powerful force, but it is not the only force in the world. There are those who seek not to be found, and those who wish to stay where they belong. The river, you see, does not simply take, it tests. It watches." The words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Nena could feel the weight of them, like a physical presence pressing against her chest. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I am saying that your daughter is not lost in the way you think," the keeper replied. "She has not been taken by the river because of malice. She was chosen. Chica is not a victim of the river's whims. She is part of its very essence now." Nena felt her heart stop. "Chosen?" she echoed, the word reverberating in her mind. Uzo stepped forward, his voice harsh with disbelief. "What do you mean? She's just a child. The river can't just—" "She is not just a child," the keeper interrupted, its voice calm but firm. "She is a part of the river now. A guardian, just as the river once had guardians of its own. She has been transformed by its power, by its will." A wave of shock washed over Nena, and she stumbled backward, her legs feeling weak beneath her. No, she whispered. That can't be true. She's just a girl. She has her whole life ahead of her. The keeper's eyes softened, but there was no sympathy in them, only understanding. The river is ancient. It chooses, and it binds. There are those who are called and those who answer. Chica answered, and now she must face what the river has in store for her. Uzo was silent, but the anguish on his face spoke volumes. His hands, which had been steady and strong through the trials so far, trembled now. "Can we see her?" Nena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The keeper did not answer immediately. Instead, it turned, raising its arms as though calling to the very depths of the lake. Slowly, the water began to ripple, and in the center of the lake, a figure began to emerge. A figure of light, almost translucent, glowing with a radiance that seemed to pulse with the very rhythm of the universe itself. It was Chica. At first, Nena could hardly believe her eyes. She had imagined this moment so many times, but nothing could have prepared her for the sight of her daughter standing before her, her form luminous, almost ethereal. Chica's eyes, once full of the innocence of youth, now held a depth beyond her years, a wisdom that belonged to the ancient river itself. "Chica!" Nena cried, her voice breaking. Chica looked at her parents, her expression unreadable, distant. "Mother? Father? You should not have come," she said softly, her voice echoing in the stillness of the lake. "No, Chica," Uzo said, his voice strained with emotion. "We've come for you. We'll take you home. You're not meant to stay here, not like this." But Chica shook her head, her gaze never leaving theirs. "I cannot return with you," she said, her voice filled with sadness. "I belong here now. I am a part of the river. I am its guardian." Nena's heart shattered in her chest. "No, Chica, you don't belong to the river. You belong with us. You're our daughter." But Chica's eyes were distant, her features unreadable. "I am the river's now," she said, as though repeating a truth she could no longer deny. The keeper, watching from the shore, spoke again. "The river takes those who are chosen, and it transforms them. You cannot undo what has been done. Chica is no longer the child you knew. She is a part of something greater." For a moment, Nena and Uzo stood there, unable to speak, unable to move. The truth of what they were hearing was too overwhelming, too impossible to accept. Their daughter was gone, not lost, but transformed, reborn into something they didn't understand. And then, without another word, Chica turned, her glowing form vanishing into the water once more, leaving only the ripples behind. Nena collapsed to her knees, Uzo beside her, both of them drowning in the silence of the lake. The river had not taken Chica to harm her. No, it had chosen her. And in its choice, it had taken their daughter from them forever. But even in that loss, something stirred deep within Nena's heart. A whisper, faint but insistent. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe the river had not finished with them yet. The weight of the truth lingered over Uzo and Nena like a heavy cloud, thick and suffocating. They stood in the same spot, surrounded by the eerie stillness of the lake, trying to understand what had just happened. The image of Chica, glowing, and distant haunted Nena's thoughts, each memory of her daughter's smile and laughter now a painful reminder of the impossibility of the present. Uzo, still silent, ran his hand through his hair, his face drawn in anguish. He hadn't said a word since Chica's departure, and Nena knew that the shock was too deep for him to find the right words. Her heart ached for him, but more than that, it ached for herself, for the mother who had been torn from her child, for the woman who now stood on the edge of the unknown. "What now?" Nena finally asked, her voice quiet, almost lost in the vastness of the lake. "What do we do now?" Uzo looked at her, his eyes filled with something dark, something heavy with the weight of hopelessness. But in the depth of his gaze, Nena saw a spark she hadn't seen before. It was not the despair of a man who had given up. No, this was something else. This was determination. "We go deeper," Uzo said, his voice low but resolute. Deeper? Nana repeated, confused. What do you mean? We can't leave her like this. We need to understand what this river truly is. There's something we're missing, something we don't know. Nana's heart began to race again, not from fear, but from the urgency of Uzo's words. They had come so far, fought so hard, and still, they had only scratched the surface of the river's mystery. She had known, deep down, that there was more to this place than met the eye. There had to be. But how? Nana asked, her voice thick with emotion. How do we go deeper? Chica is gone, Uzo. The river has taken her. Not gone, he said, his voice firm. She's still here. She's part of this river now. We just have to find a way to reach her. Nana could feel her breath catch in her throat. There was something about Uzo's certainty that made her hesitate, something in the way he spoke, as though he knew something that she didn't. And, for the first time, she realized just how little she understood of the river, of the forces at play here. I don't understand, she admitted. I don't understand any of this. How can we reach her? She's part of the river now. Uzo turned to face her, his eyes softening as he took her hand in his. I know. But I don't believe the river has taken her to destroy her. It has taken her to make her something more, something greater. The words hit her like a wave, and for a moment, Nana couldn't breathe. Could it be? Could the river really have chosen Chica for a reason, not as a punishment, but as a transformation? But if that was true, why had the keeper made it sound so final? Why had Chica seemed so distant, as though she had already left them behind? We need to find the heart of the river, Uzo continued, his voice unwavering. There is a deeper power at work here. The keeper spoke of it, something about guardians, about the river's choice. We need to understand it, Nana. We need to know what Chica has become. Nana looked at the still lake, at the ripples that seemed to carry a hidden depth, and felt an almost magnetic pull toward it. There was something out there, something waiting to be discovered. And whether she understood it or not, she knew that it was their only hope. I don't know how, Uzo, Nana whispered, the doubt creeping back into her voice. How do we find it? How do we go deeper when everything here feels so endless? Uzo squeezed her hand. We follow the river, he said simply. We follow its flow. It will take us where we need to go. Without another word, he turned, leading her toward the edge of the lake. The water lapped gently against the shore, almost as if beckoning them forward. Nana hesitated for only a moment before following him. There was no turning back now. They had come too far, and the pull to save Chica was too strong. As they stepped into the water, it was as though the lake itself shifted. The water, once calm and still, began to stir, responding to their presence. Slowly, cautiously, they moved, deeper, their feet sinking into the cool, dark depths. The water, now reaching their knees, felt strange, alive almost. It was as though it was whispering to them, urging them onward. The further they went, the more the water seemed to shift around them. It was no longer just a physical force. It was as though the river was a living entity, guiding them, testing them. The deeper they went, the darker it became, until the light of the moon seemed distant and faint. And then, as though the river itself had decided to reveal its secrets, a faint glow appeared beneath the water. It was not the soft shimmer of moonlight. No, this light was different. It was a deep, pulsating glow, almost like a heartbeat. Nana gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. What is that? She asked, her voice trembling with awe. Uzo didn't answer. Instead, he took a step forward, his eyes fixed on the glow. There was no fear in his gaze, only determination. He knew somehow that this was the answer. This was what they had been searching for. As they moved closer to the light, the water around them grew warmer, almost soothing. And then, as if the river had decided they were worthy, the glow began to rise, swirling upward like a vortex, revealing something beneath the surface. It was a massive stone altar covered in intricate carvings that seemed to pulse with energy. The light emanated from within the stone, its surface alive with symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and change with each passing moment. And in the center of the altar, there was a crystal, glowing with the same light. "This is it," Uzo whispered. "This is the heart of the river." Nena could only stare in awe, her breath catching in her throat. The crystal pulsed in time with her heartbeat, and she knew, deep in her soul, that this was the key to everything. This was where the river's secrets would be revealed, and this was where they would find Chica. But as Nena reached out to touch the crystal, the water around them surged, pulling them back. "No!" Uzo shouted. "Not yet!" And just like that, the water grew calm again, and the light disappeared beneath the surface. The river wasn't done with them yet, and neither was Chica. The silence that followed the disappearance of the glowing altar hung in the air like a thick fog. Nena and Uzo stood frozen, their feet sinking into the cool, dark water. The pulsating light from the crystal had vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving them with nothing but the eerie stillness of the lake. The only sound now was the soft lapping of the water against their legs, the only light the pale reflection of the moon on the surface. Nena's heart raced. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, heavy and suffocating. She had believed, for a fleeting second, that they had finally found the answers, that the river had revealed its heart to them. But now, with the altar gone, the overwhelming sense of uncertainty returned. What just happened?" Nena whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking louder would somehow break the fragile stillness around them. Uzo, still staring at the spot where the altar had been, didn't answer immediately. He was deep in thought, his brow furrowed as if trying to piece together the fragments of the vision they had just witnessed. He had seen something, felt something far beyond the physical world. But what was it? And why had it vanished so suddenly? "I don't know," he finally said, his voice low. "But I feel like we're closer, Nena. The river, it's testing us." "Testing us?" Nena repeated, her voice trembling. "How can it be testing us? We don't even understand what it's doing to us, Uzo. This isn't just a river. It's something more." She could feel it now, the pull of the water beneath her, as if the very river itself was alive, aware of their presence. There was a force here, something ancient and powerful, something beyond their understanding. It was both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "We have to keep going," Uzo said, his voice steady but insistent. "We're not done yet. Chica isn't gone, Nena. The river hasn't finished with her." Nena turned to look at him, her face a mix of confusion and doubt. "But how do you know that? We saw the crystal. We saw the altar. What else could there be?" Uzo's gaze softened as he met her eyes. "There's something else, Nena. Something beyond the physical. The river. It doesn't just take. It gives too." She didn't fully understand what he meant, but there was a quiet certainty in his words that made her hesitate. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps this river, this force they had underestimated, was offering them something more than they had realized. "But what was the cost? Do you feel that?" Uzo asked suddenly, breaking Nena from her thoughts. His voice was urgent now, his eyes wide with realization. Before she could respond, Nena felt it too. A sharp, piercing pain deep within her chest, like a pressure she had never known. It was as if something inside her was being squeezed, twisted, pulled. It was unbearable, and she gasped in surprise. "Uzo, what's happening? What is this?" Her voice cracked with panic as she stumbled back, clutching her chest. Uzo's face paled as he reached out to steady her, his hand gripping hers tightly. I think the river is asking us to give something. A sacrifice." The word hit Nena like a thunderclap, shaking her to the core. A sacrifice. Was that why the altar had disappeared? Was that why the river had shown them a glimpse of its heart, only to take it away? It was as if the river was asking for something in return, something they didn't yet understand. I don't know if I can do that, Nena said, her voice trembling with fear. I don't know if I'm ready to lose anything else. Uzo squeezed her hand, his grip strong and reassuring. I don't think we have a choice. The river doesn't give without asking for something in return. And right now, the only thing that matters is Chica. We have to be willing to pay the price, Nena. The words settled heavily in the air between them. What was the price? What was the river asking of them? And could they truly pay it? I'm not sure I can, Uzo, Nena whispered, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. I've already lost so much. I can't lose any more. But as she spoke, a sudden calm washed over her. It wasn't the same calm that had gripped her when they first stepped into the river, nor the peaceful quiet that followed the vanishing of the altar. No, this was something different. It was a sense of resignation, of acceptance, as though the river itself was pulling her towards something she couldn't resist, something she had to face. Without warning, the water around them began to stir again, swirling as if in response to their thoughts. Nena felt her pulse quicken, and she looked to Uzo for reassurance, but he only nodded, as though he had been expecting this. He knew this was the next step, the next part of the journey. The river was calling them deeper, and this time, Nena knew they couldn't turn back. They had come too far, seen too much. Chica's life, her fate, was tied to this place. The sacrifice was inevitable. With a deep breath, Nena stepped forward, letting the water rise around her, and for the first time she didn't resist. She accepted the pain, the uncertainty, and the fear. It was all part of the price they had to pay. Together, they walked deeper into the river, ready to face whatever awaited them in the depths, ready to confront whatever the river would demand from them. And as they moved forward, the water grew colder, the pressure in their chests increasing, until it felt as though the river was alive inside them, its pulse matching their own. Tite were no longer just standing in the river. They were part of it, and the river was waiting. The water had risen, creeping up their bodies until it almost felt like it was swallowing them whole. Every step they took seemed heavier, each movement slowed by the weight of the river, as though it were testing their resolve, pushing them further into its depths. Nena and Uzo walked side by side, their breaths shallow, their hearts drumming loudly in their chests. I feel it, Uzo. It's like the water is alive inside me. Like it's watching me, Nena whispered, her voice tight with unease. Her words seemed to echo strangely in the thick, humid air, as if the river itself was listening. Uzo's gaze remained forward, his expression unreadable. It's not just watching you. It's becoming you, he replied, his voice low. We're in the river now. Everything it is, we are. Everything we were, we leave behind. Nena shuddered at his words. She didn't want to think about what that meant. It felt like they were crossing some invisible line, and once they crossed it, there would be no turning back. She glanced at Uzo, hoping to find some comfort in his eyes, but all she saw was the same uncertainty she felt in her own heart. The river seemed to stretch on endlessly before them, the water churning and swirling in patterns that defied logic. There was a strange rhythm to the water, an ebb and flow that almost seemed to communicate with the two of them, urging them onward. What do you think it wants from us? Nena asked, her voice barely a murmur, as if she were afraid the river itself would hear her. Uzo didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the swirling water, his jaw clenched. I think the river is testing us, Nena. It's testing our hearts, our willingness to give, to sacrifice. Nena swallowed hard. But how do we know what it wants us to sacrifice? How do we know we're ready? Uzo turned to her then, his face a mixture of determination and exhaustion. I don't think we'll ever be ready. But the river doesn't care about readiness. It only cares about what's inside us, the truth we're hiding from, the truth we're scared to face. His words hung in the air between them, thick with meaning. Nana's heart pounded harder, in her chest. Was it her truth? Was it Chica's? Or was it the river's truth? They had come so far, faced so many dangers. But this was different. This was no longer about saving Chica. This was about saving themselves. And perhaps saving something much larger than that. Suddenly, the water around them seemed to ripple violently, pulling them forward with such force that Nana had to grip Uzo's arm to steady herself. A low, guttural growl echoed through the air, sending a chill down her spine. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Uzo nodded grimly, his eyes scanning the dark expanse of water. "I hear it. It's the river's voice. It's time." Without warning, the water surged higher, engulfing their bodies completely. Nana gasped, her chest tightening as the liquid filled her lungs. She wanted to scream, but the water pressed down on her throat, choking the sound before it could escape. And then, as quickly as it had come, the water receded, leaving them standing in an eerie calm. Nana coughed, gasping for air, her legs trembling beneath her. She turned to look at Uzo, but he was staring ahead, his eyes wide with shock. "Uzo, what just happened?" Nana asked, still fighting to catch her breath. "I don't know," he replied, his voice distant. "But I think we've crossed into its heart. The river isn't just a place anymore, it's something else." Nana's mind raced as she tried to process his words. Something else? What could he mean? But before she could ask him to explain, she felt it. A shift in the air. The temperature had dropped, and the world around them seemed to darken. The river, once calm, now began to churn violently again, its surface bubbling and frothing as though it were boiling. From the depths of the water, a figure slowly emerged, cloaked in shadow, its shape barely discernible against the murky depths. The figure floated effortlessly toward them, its presence overwhelming and otherworldly. As it drew closer, Nana's heart skipped a beat. The figure was no longer an abstract shape. It was a woman, her skin a deep shade of blue, like the water itself. Her hair flowed around her like a mass of dark, shifting tendrils, and her eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. Nana took a step back, her pulse racing. Who are you?" The woman's lips parted, revealing sharp, pearly teeth, her voice a haunting melody that seemed to echo from the very depths of the river. "I am the river's guardian, and you, Nana, Uzo, are the ones who have called upon me." The guardians, gaze locked onto Nana, her eyes piercing through her very soul. "You seek to save your friend, Chica, but you do not yet understand the cost of what you ask." Nana swallowed hard. "What do you mean? We've come this far. We have to save her. She's—" The guardian raised her hand, silencing Nana with a single powerful gesture. "You misunderstand, child. It is not Chica who needs saving. It is you. It is all of you. For you have crossed into the river's realm, and here, the price is not always clear." The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous, as the river rippled with an ancient, quiet energy. Nana's stomach twisted with fear, but she refused to back down. "We're not afraid," Uzo said, his voice firm despite the doubt that clouded his features. "We're ready." The guardian's laugh was soft, like a whisper carried by the wind. "Ready? No one is ever ready, but you will face your truth, whether you are prepared or not." The water around them began to rise again, swirling violently as though a storm was forming beneath the surface. Nana's heart pounded in her chest. Was this it? Was this the reckoning? The guardian's figure slowly began to fade, her eyes locking onto theirs one last time. "Remember, you called upon me, and now you must face what you have summoned." As the last traces of the guardian disappeared into the darkness, the river began to settle once more. But Nana and Uzo knew one thing for certain. Whatever lay ahead, they had crossed a threshold. There was no turning back now. They had called upon the river, and the river had answered. Now, they would pay the price. The world was silent. The once roaring river now lay still, as if holding its breath, waiting for something. No. Someone. The calm, however, was fleeting. In the distance, Nena and Uzo stood frozen, their hearts still racing from the presence of the river guardian. Something powerful had been awakened within the depths of the water, but it wasn't just the guardian's power that lingered in the air. It was the weight of fate itself. Then, a soft rustle interrupted the silence. Both Nena and Uzo turned, eyes wide with disbelief. The injured parrot that had led them through the treacherous paths appeared before them, though it no longer resembled the bird they had once known. The creature's feathers shimmered with a radiant glow, as if bathed in a light that no mortal eye had ever witnessed. Its once dull eyes were now filled with wisdom, a deep, eternal knowing that seemed to span centuries. The parrot opened its beak, but instead of the raspy squawks from before, a voice emerged, deep and powerful, resonating like the sound of thunder after a storm. "I am not just a simple bird," it said, its voice carrying an aura of divinity. "I have always been here, watching, listening, waiting for the right moment to reveal my true nature." Nena's eyes widened in shock, and Uzo took a step back, his hand instinctively clutching Nena's arm. What are you?" Nena whispered, her voice trembling. The parrot, no, the entity before them, perched on a branch above them, his wings glowing like golden threads woven through the sun. "I am the spirit of the forgotten, the protector of those lost in the currents of fate. I have lived many lives, served many purposes, but now my time has come to act." Uzo's breath caught. "But why? Why were you guiding us?" The parrot's Aigura eyes gleamed with ancient sorrow. "You and your friends, Chica, you are bound by threads of fate that twist in ways unseen. I have watched over you all, waiting for the moment when you would call upon me." Nena's mind raced. We need to save Chica. She's trapped by the river's spirit. How can we—" Before she could finish, the parrot, no longer merely a bird but a divine entity, spread its wings wide. The air around them shimmered, and a warm golden light poured from the creature, filling the entire space. "The river has its rules," the parrot continued, its voice echoing through the sky. "But no force is all-powerful. The spirit of the river may rule the currents, but the spirit of love, of truth, and of justice is stronger. I am the embodiment of those forces." As the parrot spoke, the river began to stir once more. But this time, the water no longer seemed to hold the same malicious intent. It was as if it recognized something had shifted, something beyond its reach. The river guardian's voice thundered from the depths, full of rage. "You dare challenge me, parrot? You are nothing but a fleeting moment in time." The entity smiled, its golden feathers shining with unshakable confidence. "I am no fleeting moment. I am the eternal, and I have come to restore balance." With a single flap of its powerful wings, the parrot, the divine being, sent a pulse of light that rippled across the surface of the water. The river churned violently, as if trying to resist the power that surged through it. Yet the parrot's light was undeniable, brighter and more relentless than anything the river could summon. The guardian shrieked in fury as waves rose high, crashing against each other like thunderclaps. "You will not take what is mine!" But the entity, unwavering, stood its ground. "You may hold dominion over these waters, but you cannot claim what is pure." A battle of forces unfolded in the heart of the river, a cosmic struggle between the spirit of the river and the force of divine love and justice. The very essence of the river seemed to crack under the weight of the entity's power. Waves and winds spiraled violently, but the entity was resolute, pushing the darkness away, one wave of light at a time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the churning waters began to still. The force of the battle between the river guardian and the divine parrot was overwhelming, but the light of justice had proven stronger. The dark waters, once so aggressive and full of wrath, began to calm, settling into a quiet, peaceful flow. From the depths of the river, the guardian's presence slowly dissolved. Her figure evaporated into the mist, her fury dissipating into the calm breeze. Silence returned, but it was a different silence now, one of peace, one of resolution. The parrot, glowing in its divine form, turned toward Nena and Uzo. "Your friend is safe now," it said, its voice soft, full of compassion. "The river has been tempered. Chica's soul will return, and the curse will be lifted." Before Nena could speak, the waters of the river shifted once again, this time pulling gently at the edges of the shore. And then, in a flash of golden light, Chica emerged, her eyes wide with confusion but alive, her body no longer bound by the river's grasp. Nena's breath caught in her throat, and Uzo stepped forward, his heart lifting as he saw Chica standing. "They're free, Chica!" Nena cried out, rushing to embrace her friend. Chica blinked in surprise, but then wrapped her arms around Nena, her body trembling in the embrace. I don't understand," Chica whispered, her voice shaky. "How did I was sure I'd never get out. How did I—" "The river took you," the parrot explained softly. "But I have freed you." As Nena and Chica hugged each other, tears welling up in their eyes, the parrot turned to them, its form glowing brighter. "Remember this moment, and remember that love, truth, and justice will always find a way. They are eternal forces, and they will guide you when all seems lost." With one final beat of its wings, the parrot ascended into the sky, its golden light fading as it disappeared beyond the horizon. The river, now calm and peaceful, flowed gently beneath them. And as Nena, Uzo, and Chica stood together, the reality of what had just happened began to settle in. The river had tested them, but they had triumphed, not with strength, but with love and truth. And as they left the banks of the river, they knew their lives had changed forever. The darkness of the river had been conquered by the light of their courage and the bond of their friendship. They would return to their village, but now they would see the world through new eyes, knowing that no matter what came next, the forces of love and justice would always prevail.